Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm LT, and today we are going to be finalizing the rebuild of the 4L80 transmission that is in the ugly truck. And I'm a little bit nervous because this is the very first time I've ever been inside a 4L80 and I have no idea if this whole thing's gonna work. But if you're new to the channel, first of all, subscribe. Second of all, check out one of the videos that kind of leads up to this because this is like probably the third or fourth video in the whole 4L80 rebuild, because originally we pulled it out just to put a shift kit and a high stall converter in, and then I realized that there were some parts broken inside the transmission. So we kind of shifted gears a little bit. I took the transmission apart. I rebuilt most of it. In the last video, we just finished up the whole, I call it the guts, but like the gear train, everything on the inside. And today we're going to be taking care of the hydraulics, you know, the valve body and a few other associated items that make this thing shift exactly how it should, because we're asking a lot more of this 4L80 than it was designed to work with. I mean, I know the 4L80 is a very strong transmission, but the Silverado here under the hood, it's got a turbocharged 8.1 liter big block. It's a heavy truck. It probably weighs nearly 5,000 pounds. So we're putting about, well, a little over 700 pounds of torque in the transmission. And that's what we're doing today, guys. So enjoy. All right, so we're cruising right along and we have all the mechanical portion of the 4L80 rebuild completely done. We've got several new gears in there, all new clutches, all new bushings, all new seals except for fourth gear, but we won't talk about that. So pretty much everything is ready to rock and roll, and we need to put the hydraulic side of things back together because remember, this is an automatic transmission and this is all based on fluid pumps engaging and disengaging clutches and all kinds of different stuff. So all this, I call these worm tracks, but this is the circuitry that controls the clutches, and this is like the brains of it. This is what switches fluid on and off and allows it to go in different places. So I did modify this valve body a couple of videos ago by installing a Transgo HD2 shift kit, which is fairly popular in the 4L80 world, but there's actually a few things that I'm going to undo and change from this kit. And the first thing is the pressure relief valve. Transgo includes this in their 4L80 shift kit, and basically what you do is you drill a small hole right in this upper corner of the valve body, and this valve kind of, it's like an old carburetor. You got that little tapered seat and it goes in that hole, and there's a spring in there. It kind of sits like that. And basically this will hold back all your line pressure except if there's like a runaway condition, which not your engine running away, but there's something that can go wrong inside the transmission and cause line pressure to spike, which could like crack the case or some other catastrophic failures, which from what I understand is actually a little bit on the uncommon side of things. But this valve was designed as a preventative measure, but the side effect is if that valve ever does get like pushed open, it won't return closed, or so the internet says. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna omit that valve, but now that I've already drilled the hole, I need to plug this off. So I found just in my drawer of miscellaneous stuff, I've got myself an 1/8 inch NPT drill and a tap, and then just an 1/8 inch NPT plug. So what we'll do is we'll drill that out a little bit larger, tap it through, and that'll seal that off, basically undoing this portion of the modification. Now the other thing we're going to be changing is the separator plate. The shift kit does come with this 3-layer separator plate, which the purpose is to do a dual feed mod in third gear. And if I can get this turned around, you can see there's 3 layers on that separator plate. And yeah, like I said, there's a fluid path somewhere in this corner down here. I'm not entirely sure which one. I think maybe over here. So there's a hole in the top plate over here, and the hole in the bottom plate is, say, over there, and the middle plate has a groove connecting the two. So whenever third gear is selected, they'll route hydraulic pressure to 2 different places in the direct drum, increasing the holding power. Now, if you'll remember, when we rebuilt the unit a couple of videos ago, I actually left off 1 sealing ring and a lip seal in the center of the direct clutch, and that'll accomplish the same exact thing without having to use this dual or 3-layer separator plate. And the reason why I want to get rid of it is because it's known to cross leak, or basically in between these 3 layers, fluid can kind of get where it's not supposed to be. So what I've done is I've cleaned up my stock separator plate. I scraped off all the gaskets. I took some 220 grit sandpaper and I blocked it as flat as I possibly could, because there were a few scrape marks here and there from scraping the gasket off. But we do need to actually enlarge the holes for the shifting. Now there's 3 of them that we're going to deal with. This is for the 1-2 shift, for the 2-3 shift, and the 3-4 shift. These guys right here, second and fourth, we're going to enlarge those to about 95 thousandths of an inch, 100, kind of depends on what drill bit I have. But this one, I'm actually going to leave that the stock hole size right there. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm actually going to be just omitting the check ball right here in this location. And that'll basically leave this hole right here wide open for fluid. And the reason why you want to do that, according to what I've read, remember, don't do as I say, do your own research, but according to what I've read from several prominent transmission builders, when you dual feed direct, there's a lot more fluid volume that you need to fill up that clutch. So that's why we're just going to leave that hole open. You could probably drill it out a little bit bigger, but instead, you know, Jake just says, leave that check ball out, drill second and fourth. So I trust what he says, that's what I'm going to do. I wish I knew more about the hydraulic circuits behind all this stuff, but we're going to give it a shot. So a couple more holes to drill, put some check balls in the transmission, and we're done. Enlarging holes in the separator plate is pretty standard practice, and basically the bigger hole allows more fluid volume through, and that'll just let the shift come on a little bit quicker. Now, depending on what stall speed converter you have, you can enlarge these holes a little bit further. Like, let's say I used a 90 thousandths hole on a stock converter, that would shift pretty firmly, and then a 90 thousandths hole on a really, really high stall speed converter, that'll make it shift a lot softer. But either way, once the holes are drilled, I'm just taking some more 220 grit on a block and just kind of making sure there's no little burrs on the edge where we drilled the hole. We'll take the accumulator off the valve body, and that lets us remove the separator plate. And there's a couple springs in here, just kind of pay attention to which one goes where because it does make a difference. We'll remove the transgo separator plate and toss that, and then this always makes it a little bit nervous kind of drilling into something like a valve body, but I just take your time. This is pretty straightforward stuff, you know, installing the pipe plug. Use a little bit of WD-40 just to make sure the tap cuts nice and clean, and then it'll kind of help wash out any shavings from the flutes of the tap. And then just periodically check your pipe plug to make sure you're not tapping too deep because NPT is a tapered fitting. Now obviously I didn't show it here, but you do want to clean out any aluminum from the valve body because those little shavings, those could plug up a valve pretty quick and cause all kinds of problems. But there's your finished product. So you'll quickly learn to make this transmission assembly goo like your very best friend when you're working on this stuff because it's like a glue almost, and it holds everything in place. These paper gaskets, they're on the thin side, and if you gotta like slide parts around a bunch to try to get a bolt to line up, there's a pretty good chance you'll tear it. So just glue the gasket in place, you know, very gently slide the separator plate where it belongs, and then we can put the accumulator back on. I did not actually replace the seals inside yet, so I'm gonna take a quick second to do that. Pop the old ones off, pop the new ones in. These are pretty just basic like rubber O-rings, so easy job in and out. Plenty of lube, and they push right back down in the bore with a nice tight fit. The next accumulator actually has two seals on it, but it's the same exact routine. New O-ring, lubricant, push it back down in the bore. Also, just make sure they don't twist up because these O-rings are kind of rectangular. There's a deep groove that they sit in, so just pay attention, take your time. Now I have seen guys actually use a paintbrush to apply this grease, and I think probably what you could do is if you took just a little bit of ATF and put it kind of in the top of your little assembly goo bucket, it'll make this stuff a little bit thinner. I think maybe next time that's what I'll try, just to thin the grease out. A paintbrush does make it so you can get nice even coverage over a big surface area like the bottom of the separator plate. Because when I put this valve body in the transmission, it's going to be upside down, and I don't want the gasket just kind of falling out. So I coated the whole thing with the goo, and that'll hold the gasket nicely in place. On the bottom of the transmission, we're installing check balls. I believe there are 8 in total on a stock transmission. Some 4L80s have a 9th one. I'm putting actually 6 in. And I'm omitting the 3rd gear one, and there's one in reverse I think I left out too. But basically got all the bolts lined up, kind of wiggled it down into place. Make sure you get the manual valve hooked up to the selector lever on the side of the case, otherwise you're not going anywhere. And then we're going to torque the valve body to the case. I think the spec is, off the top of my head, like 108 inch-pounds, but just kind of double check the torque specs. Then it's a matter of routing the wiring harness. It just kind of clips through the side of the case there. And there's a couple of solenoids that you need to attach it to, the little pressure switch manifold there. See, I think we've got main line pressure solenoid there, torque converters also up front, and then these are your 2 shift solenoids up back. It's pretty simple wiring for a 4L80. And then finally, don't forget the little metal tube that actually sends lubricant to the rear of the tail housing. That one's pretty important. Using a screwdriver to make sure it's seated fully down into the bore, and then it's actually held in place by 1 remaining valve body bolt and a little metal tab. Alrighty guys, that is a wrap of my very first complete transmission rebuild. I've been inside a few automatics before, but this is the first time I've truly, completely rebuilt and then modified an automatic transmission. And I actually can't wrap it up just yet because the filter that was included in the rebuild kit is not the correct one. There is a shallow version, which is what we have here. And then my original filter that fits with my pan is a deep filter. And you can tell the difference because it has these 4 little raised areas here. This one's a little bit shallow or narrower than the rest, but there's the 4 little raised dots. And that will correspond with the pan that I have. So I will have to go to O'Reilly's and grab the correct filter. But other than that, we are 100% done. So what have we changed inside this 4L80? What are we going to be asking of it? And, well, how well is it going to hold up? So it is basically a stock refresh. We haven't really modified any hard parts. So there's no billet shafts. There's no trick, pistons or billet drums or anything like that on the inside. This is just a stock refresh with new stock parts. Because remember, we did chew up some gears and stuff like that. In terms of the frictions and steels, we did upgrade those a little bit. We went with the Alto stuff. And supposedly the red Alto friction material is a little bit grippier. It has a little more holding power than the stock stuff that came out. So that's good. And then also we've modified a few hydraulic circuits to send more line pressure through this thing, which will help clamp those clutch packs a little bit harder than stock, which again will increase the unit's holding power. Let's see, we did the direct drum dual feed modification where we send a lot more fluid volume into the direct drum, which means a lot more clamping power in 3rd gear specifically. And then other than that, we did a shift kit. Remember, it had the Transgo in there, but we modified it quite a bit. We did not use the Transgo separator plate. And in terms of the holes for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, like I said, I did not drill 3rd. I drilled 2nd at 108 thousandths, and I went 4th at a full 125 thousandths, so an 1/8 inch drill bit in 4th gear, and no check ball in 3rd. And I also did not drill the 3rd hole in the separator plate. Once again, don't do what I'm doing because, well, I have no idea what I'm doing. So anyway, yeah, this is pretty much a complete rebuild, and I do need to get this in the truck, but there are a few more tweaks that I need to make before we actually get this thing out on the road and drive it. Mainly the transmission cooler. So far, the Ugly Truck's been using the stock trans cooler behind the intercooler, and there's one in the radiator. And the trans temps, they've been right around like 195, 198, so it's on the warm side, but I'm replacing all that. I'm ditching the cooler in the radiator in favor of a single True Cool 40K, just a really big air-to-air or liquid-to-air cooler that'll sit up front behind the intercooler. So that'll hopefully keep this thing a little bit cooler than it was running before, because remember, when you have a higher stall speed converter, you're going to be making your transmission run a little bit warmer than before, and a cool transmission is a happy transmission. So anyway, that's going to bring this video to an end. I'll get that filter on the way. I do want to say thank you guys for watching. Do the 3 things for me. Subscribe to the channel, click the like button, drop a comment down below, and wish me luck, guys, because I am going to need it. We're going to be pumping about 700 pound-feet of torque through this thing for now, and then in long term, just so you guys are on the same page, long term I'm probably not going to be using this unit because the 547 big block, I think, is just, I would have to redo everything here, but this transmission is not going to go to waste, because if I just pop off the tail housing there, take everything back apart, switch the output shaft, I can then hook that up to, which, by the way, guys, this is probably a sneak peek. I'm not quite sure what order these videos are going to drop. But my ultimate goal is to have that 4L80 in the step side outside attached to this cool little transfer case right here. And if you guys know transfer cases, you'll know that there's something missing right here, which actually makes this a really cool transfer case. And I'll give you guys all the details on this and the plan for the step side truck in again, I don't know the order that this is all going to drop in, but I know you guys know what I'm doing. I'm just really excited about it, and I'm going to make a video explaining everything, long-term plans for that truck. So anyway, this 4L80 will work for a while behind the 8.1. We'll take it out. We'll replace it with a properly built 4L80 by, maybe I'll get with precision transmission. Maybe we'll build something for the 547, and we'll save the one I just built for the step side. Anyway, sorry for the rambling, guys. I do want to say thank you for watching. You guys are the best. We'll catch you again in another couple of days.